Welcome to our next episode of The Corporate Box. Today we are going to be talking about the various sporting leagues that exist in India and how are they structured. And joining us again is going to be Dhruv Mullick. Hello and welcome Dhruv. Welcome to the next episode of Corporate Box.
Thanks for having me again. And it's sports leagues today.
Sports leagues. There are so many of them which have been mushrooming, right?
Yeah.
People are always intrigued. They want to know how these leagues function. I know that TV numbers might not be great for all the leagues,
Yeah.
but some of the leagues have established a good market. They have some television viewership which loyal followers have. So we'll try and break them down and try and explain some of the leagues
Yeah.
and explain how the structure, the financial structure of the
Right.
leagues also work.
Yeah, and I think that's a great conversation and a great way to start. For a lot of us, when we followed sport in India prior to, what are we talking, prior to early 90s, we had public sector companies that would take part in various corporate tournaments.
Yes.
And you would have these lower division cricket leagues that would be feeder systems to
Yes.
to the Ranji Trophy. But in Bangalore, one of the leagues that I really liked that started back in the day was the PHL, the Premier Hockey League.
That was like a landmark league that I think Prime Sports, it was called at that time, or Star Sports.
Yeah,
They
it
put
was.
it together.
They had put it together. It again wasn't commercially sustainable, so it did collapse, I think, pretty quickly. There used to be, prior to the I League, the Indian football's top division was called the National Football
Yes.
League. And then they kind of, rebranded it into
Rebranded
the
it.
I League. They put a pyramid system together.
Yes, broadcaster Z Sports at that time had come
Correct.
and helped with all the refurbishing of the league.
Yeah.
They had put in a lot of money for a 10-year period and made
Yeah.
sure that the league is going to sustain. So I was very excited about that actually.
Yeah, but again, that didn't survive as well. And glad you mentioned Z, because the first real cricket league that we saw in India prior to the IPL was the ICL, which is the forgotten story in a lot of Indian sports business conversations. And everyone today, if you ask them why an IPL became what it did and why an ICL didn't, is just again the basic definitions of franchise league versus non-franchise league.
Yes.
And ICL was a league that was run by one owner, one television owner in ZTV. And you didn't have different team owners, or you didn't have different franchise owners.
Sure.
The IPL was the polar opposite. You had a closed door NBA type, NFL type, US based franchise league where franchise owners invested in the asset, owned it for perpetuity, no promotion relegation, a closed shop, an independent central broadcaster, and which is why over 20 years later, where it is still a thriving body. And I think a lot of sports in India try to replicate the
Yes.
IPL model. I think that's the premise of the
That's
conversation.
the premise. Let's go a step behind.
Yeah.
There are a couple of reasons why these leagues are important and why they are being started, right?
Yeah.
One is obviously every federation which is backed by the government or which is non-backed by the government, like the BCCI.
Yep.
They require some kind of monetization, which
Yes.
is not necessarily going to happen when at a national event or a district level sports or the other state level events that they do,
Or through sponsorship.
or through the sponsorship. So
Yeah,
that is
glad
not
you
going
brought
to
that
happen.
up. Glad you
So
brought
it's
that up.
important that these leagues offer a chance for these federations to monetize.
Yes.
Because they can be structured in a way where sponsorship and broadcast can be viable for that league.
Yes.
That is one aspect. The second, and which is what the entire premise of the ICL or the IPL was,
Players getting paid.
players getting paid, more players getting paid.
Yes.
So professionalism, maybe say there were 20 people who could represent India
Yeah.
and who could be making money.
Yeah.
With the IPL and the other leagues, the number of people who could make this as a profession actually was like multiplied many number of times.
Yeah.
And that's how the IPL has been a model of success.
And that was a cultural shift again in Indian sport, Akhil, because you played sport primarily for a public sector job, for a
Correct.
government job. You played sport to get a seat in a university or a college.
Yeah.
The IPL was the ultimate disruptor there because you played sport to earn a professional salary. You
Yeah.
became a professional athlete.
Yeah.
Now, Where cricket and non-cricket sports differ in India, you hit the nail on the head. The BCCI is not a national federation. It's not a government-backed association like a lot of the other sports like football and hockey primarily. So it was a lot easier for the BCCI with a maverick like Lalit Modi to replicate an American franchise model and bring it to cricket. And then you have the very simple franchisee model. The BCCI became the franchisor. It was sending out the league and various owners would pay money to acquire the franchise.
So Dhruv, let's talk about how the IPL was different than the NFL or the PHL that happened. And then we'll also go and talk about the other leagues which have tried to replicate from the IPL, which have then emerged. So IPL, what were the differences?
So very simply, the kind of line that I draw in the middle is open league, closed league.
Just explain that a little in
So an
simpler
open
words.
league, the best way to explain an open league is like the English Premier League in football, La Liga in football, where you have multiple divisions, you have promotion and relegation, 3 teams go down, 3 teams come up. It's an open system, right?
So you play well, you go on to the next league, the best league. If you don't do well, then you're relegated to the next, the bottom league.
Correct, which is what we follow in India with the I-League and the I-League 2. Right?
It doesn't happen in the IPL though.
It doesn't happen in the IPL. The IPL is a direct replication of United States closed leagues, closed franchise leagues, like the NBA, the NFL, MLS, which is Major League Soccer, where you have 8 to 10 franchises, sometimes more. They are all one group of teams that play against each other. There is no promotion relegation. So no teams get relegated below. That's one difference. The other difference is that every team earns central rights. They earn money from a central pool. An independent central broadcaster.
Equal central pool in terms of the IPL.
Absolutely.
So whether you finish 10th or you finish the first, your central sponsorship money, the central broadcast money that each team gets in the IPL is the same.
Exactly. And this is where the genius of Lalit Modi came in, is that as we spoke about how these leagues existed in India prior to the IPL, whether we had the PHL in hockey, we had the NFL, which was the National Football League, which later became the I-League, and then we had ICL cricket before the IPL. IPL is a sustainable business model. Team owners own the franchise in perpetuity. They paid, the first set of owners paid an annual franchise fee only for 10 years. They don't have to pay it after that. They earn massive central rights. So a sustainable model, profitable, every team makes money, and it's a long-term sustainable business.
Perfect. So since the IPL, we've had multiple other leagues trying to emerge in various sports who, like you mentioned, have tried to replicate the IPL model. So do you want to just take us through the various leagues which have then come up, which are still existing? Some of them have not managed to sustain. I remember the wrestling league, we had tried to do something with that.
Pro Wrestling
League, that could not take off. But Pro Kabaddi League?
And the ISL in football. I think those are the two, would it be fair to say, Akhil, the two biggest franchise leagues in India outside the IPL?
The
ISL and the PKL.
They've survived for over 10 years.
They've survived. We'll come to the ISL a little later. But the Pro Kabaddi League, and this is something that I get quite excited about, because among the franchise leagues, and we've had a lot of these conversations, in a Kabaddi system, what would, Akhil, be the rough kind of central rights that a franchise would get in its share and in terms of its operating expenses? Because the model seems to have survived for quite a couple of years now.
It's a really well-crafted model to start off with. Like you said, it's again a closed league. There is no relegation or promotion. But again, one important point is it's one of the rare leagues in India which have managed to increase franchisees from the day it started. So it started with, the Pro Kabaddi League started with 8 teams. After say 5 or 6 seasons, 4 or 5 seasons, they actually got 4 new teams into the fold.
What's the franchise fee that they would pay?
So the initial franchise fee would have been close to 1.5 crore per franchisee. So you had to pay per 1.5 crore per year. And after say 3 or 4 years, it was raised to 2.5 crores per team per year, which was not much. So it was a very balanced, sustained
And
approach.
you pay it over what, 10 years or?
You paid per year for a period of 10 years.
10 years. So that's exactly what the
Similar
IPL
to the
did.
IPL.
Yeah, Lalit Modi's thing was the initial owners in 2008 to 2017
Correct.
had to pay their annual franchise fee. So a team like RCB that was bought for 400 crore
Yes.
would pay 40 crore a year for 10 years and then
Correct.
they didn't pay the franchise fee.
So that's how the Pro Kabaddi League, they had 8 teams to start with, then they
Right.
got in 4 more teams,
Right.
which obviously would have had a different franchise fee at that time.
Right.
But the good part here is that the broadcaster was paying a central pool for each of the team. So there was a central pool that each team got a share of, which was managed. They were not making profits in the initial years, but it was enough to keep the team going.
Right.
Plus there were other opportunities like ticketing or team sponsorship. So that is why the league has survived for 10 years, because they had a solid broadcaster who backed them.
Correct.
And they were offering central pool money. Obviously there are various cases where this is also one of the rare things where the broadcaster is a owner of a league.
Yes, that's the same with the ISL as well.
That's the same with the ISL as well, yes. But again, the ISL is a lot more, the football as a sport is a bigger entity than Kabaddi. There are other tournaments that happen. The owner also sponsors, like FSDL, which was the owner for the ISL, which had taken the rights for the ISL, also does other football for India. That's not what happens in Kabaddi.
In Kabaddi,
there is only the Pro Kabaddi League and then there is nothing else.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up to that, Akhil, because that's a question that a lot of people keep asking me, is that when we see these massive central broadcast rights announced, like we've had with the IPL, with the $6 billion and the 50,000 crores, and we know how each franchise gets a share, the broadcaster recovers that money only through ad sales, right?
Yes.
Now, in non-cricket franchise sports, I know the broadcaster doesn't pay as much for it, but how are they managing to recover that money?
So that's an interesting question. Most of the times they would not.
Right.
Pro Kabaddi is a rare exception where the broadcaster is also the owner of the league.
Right.
So when they are going and selling the sponsorship, they are selling the on-ground and on-air component together.
Okay.
So they are also selling the on-air broadcast, the spots that they can sell in between the matches.
Right.
They are also combining that with on-ground advantage of the LED branding, the access to the usage of player imagery, and also that's a combined package. With the ISL, it's a different thing. Obviously, the broadcaster has changed. If you remember, initially it was Star, now it is Jio, Viacom, who is now it's going to be a combined entity again. So when they started out, the broadcaster was selling the on-air entity and FSDL was selling the on-ground sponsorship. But again, it's going to be a combined effort now because it's all under one entity. There is one broadcaster. With another league like a Hockey India League, which has come up again.
It's made a comeback.
It's made a comeback.
Third
time.
Comeback,
Yes. So that's a different thing because the broadcaster is not owner of the league.
Right.
So they obviously will go and share their on-air sponsorship. It's very difficult to make money in that. They have now this year Hockey India League have got Sony as a broadcaster along with DD Sports. So the intent there must be to try and get more reach. With DD Sports, the reach that you get is immense. But I'm sure it's very difficult to sell an on-air just a sponsorship for something like a hockey.
And I think, see, what makes this a very interesting conversation, because when a lot of people kind of scratch their head to understand that why an IPL has this kind of profitability to the league in general, to each franchise, a lot of other sports in India, I would say, or would you say that because it doesn't attract the same kind of financial sponsorship like cricket, are these franchise models sustainable? Because if you look at a mature market like the US, yes, the broadcast rights for the NBA, which recently went into many, many $billion, are going to be a lot higher than, say, the NFL or the Major League Soccer. But each franchise league survives in its own way commercially. We've just seen it with Major League Baseball, that they have different opportunities to monetize through sub-licensing. We just saw that with the LA Dodgers, who won the World Series, and a Japanese player, and they target different markets, as we saw with Shohei Ohtani. In India, What is the reason why a lot of these leagues are unable to sustain? The badminton franchise league, I think, went out of
Yes,
business.
they tried a couple of
We
times.
mentioned the hockey league. The ISL is not a commercially sustainable model. Each franchise has massive cash burn every single year. Is it because the central rights, central sponsorships are just not high enough? Or do they not run their league at both a central league level or a franchise level as well as the IPL?
Yeah, they do not run it. They do not economically make it viable for the franchisees to be able to make profitable for each of the franchisee.
Right.
And that's the beauty of a
Is
league.
that
you know.
because the broadcaster was an owner and not an independent broadcaster bidding for rights?
Yes, that is an argument. But
Right.
when a federation is trying to create a league,
Yeah.
you need to have that marketing understanding, saying that how are you going to franchisees going to make money?
Yeah.
That is going to be the core.
Yeah.
If you want your leagues to sustain, then you have to make sure your franchisees are invested into it for the long term and they can make some money out of it.
Of course, yeah.
That
because
is
they
why-
can't keep burning cash,
can't
right?
keep
Because in
burning
the
money.
ISL, a team like Kerala Blasters has had 3 ownership changes. I remember a franchise, Hyderabad, that won the ISL. Then I think it went bankrupt almost the next season. So, in the premise of just franchise sport, it's also fair to say that just because you have a closed league with an independent broadcaster and a more beneficial business model, because in India, our open league that we have, the I-League,
Right.
it struggles every single year. Nobody watches it, it gets very limited sponsorship money. But it's also fair to say that outside cricket, just because you have a good franchise closed model,
Right.
it doesn't mean it will sustain.
It doesn't mean it's
Got
going
it.
to sustain. I'm very excited to see how the chess league actually goes forward.
That's franchise league as
That's
well.
a franchise league that's been backed by the Mahindra Group.
Yes.
So Tech Mahindra is backing the league.
Yeah.
So at least they have a very strong backing. They know that the league can sustain, and obviously chess is not a TV friendly sport.
Yes,
So
yeah.
it's not going to be dependent on the broadcast money so much.
Yeah.
But you can see the success that India is getting in chess.
Yeah.
It's an interesting format. There are various countries, people from various countries, grandmasters who are going to compete in that. So I'm very interested to see how the chess,
league.
functions.
The pickleball
because
league as well.
Pickleball, I'm very interested to see how that goes, because I don't know if pickleball is going to be a TV friendly sport. We've still not seen how TV. It's a sport for amateurs to play and participate, but I don't know how it's going to be watched on television. So Sony is backing that, which
Yeah.
is interesting. They've backed it for multiple years.
Yeah.
So at least the presence is going to be on TV. Another interesting league is the tennis ball league, which has started. If you've seen,
Yeah, and then
ISPL.
they had a street.
That's the street premier.
The same one? Oh,
Same
yeah.
one.
Okay,
That's a
right,
tennis
right.
ball league.
Nice.
They have Star Sports this year as a sponsor, as a broadcaster. Sorry,
yeah.
they have multiple celebrity owners that they've taken in.
Right.
This year, it's going to be happening at a stage where they are also mixing it with entertainment.
Amazing.
So along with the cricket, there's going to be a lot of singing and performances there,
Yeah.
and that's a different model, because again, broadcaster is not going to pay a different money. But if you're getting good team owners, you're getting a lot of people to pay and participate
Yeah.
to be a part of the league, then that's a different model they are trying. So I'm very interested to see how these models survive and if possible scale.
Would we have had all these various leagues mushroom over the years if it wasn't for the IPL?
No, IPL was the structure, was the benchmark.
Yes.
I'm because I've seen a lot of franchisee prospectus. Lot of these volleyball league, for example, they've managed to survive.
That's a franchise league as well.
That's a franchise league as well. But I've seen prospectus of a lot of people
Yes, I
sending me
know.
these leagues
Yeah.
to see and study, to see if somebody would be wanting to invest in that league. And most of the material is coming from how the IPL structure was made.
And Akhil, is it, just to simplify it, to explain it to a lot of our people who watch our show, in India, you have these government-backed sports federations and sports association, whether it's in volleyball, hockey, football, etc. Cricket, we've spoken numerous times about the advantage that it's not a national federation, it's an independent private body. So it was a lot easier for it to start a franchise league.
Yes.
I mean, Lalit Modi just needed to pull the right strings within the BCCI, and then he executed it, and he executed a magnificent
Beautifully.
product. In a lot of these other leagues, if you are not officially authorized by the association, can your league survive?
You can't, because then there are fights about which is the original body or which is the original league, right?
Which we had in hockey all those years ago with the
And
Hockey
in
India
wrestling.
League and World Series hockey.
We had that in Kabaddi also, where there were multiple leagues which had started. Yeah, there was
beyond the PKL?
beyond the PKL. There were a couple of other leagues which had tried to come in. So there are these problems where if the federation has multiple people vying for that, then there are going to be issues. That's why what happened in cricket was just amazing.
Yeah. And cricket, to be honest, also started along similar lines, because Subhash Chandra of Z, he started a rebel league, and then the argument everyone had is, look, if you're not authorized by the BCCI, you can't have a league. Like Lalit Modi couldn't have started an IPL without the BCCI.
Yeah, I mean,
your BCCI was your main franchisor, and then you could get these franchises.
Correct.
So I think that's going to be interesting how these leagues carry on in the years to come. But on a positive note, it's good to see that we're replicating a professional franchise model. I think we have it in the US, we have it in Australia with the A-League. Europe and England follow the more open league system with their sport.
It's a very interesting phase to see how these leagues are operating. Like we do in the corporate box, we have a business snapshot that we talk about every episode. This episode, we are going to be talking about an interesting part of the pro leagues that is going to be an emerging trend. The women's pro league that happens in India.
Women's Premier League,
The cricket league, the women's Premier League that happens. It's an amazing format. The cash-rich owners most of them are IPL team owners, have got and invested into the women's Premier League teams. And it's caught on, right? It's really doing well. RCB won last year and there were a lot of celebrations, there was a lot of following.
It'll be the third season this year. And this, it would be fair to say, Akhil, is the first women's professional franchise league in India.
The separate one.
Yeah, a separate one. Although yes, some owners in the WPL also own IPL teams. But what's the best thing about it? And that's the point of yours that I really love, where you said that the benefit of these professional franchise leagues are, one, it's an additional monetization opportunity for the governing body, but the second most one is the athletes getting paid. Now again, we won't get into specifics and salaries, but the contracts that these women professional cricketers have earned over the years, a few of them have got contracts over 1 crore. Smriti Mandana has a contract close to 3 crore. For a women professional athlete in India to earn this professional salary playing the sport, yes, I understand it's cricket, but that to me is the biggest benefit of having a professional league in women's sport. It'll be great over the next couple of years if a franchise model can be replicated in other women's sports. I don't see it happening. I think it's still going to be just cricket for a couple of years, because as we saw with even men's professional franchise sport, we had IPL and then it was trial and error with a lot of other sports. So it's a good start. And it's at least great to have this one professional sport for women in India, professional league for women in India.
Hockey India has also started a women's league. There are a few teams that are participating, owned by different owners.
That's a separate franchise property for women?
That's a separate franchise property.
When is that kicking off?
That is going on with the
simultaneously with the men?
Yes. So that is going on. I think the UTT, the table tennis league, also has women players participating. But what I'm most excited with the women's Premier League is that a separate set of brands can enter the sport, which is always important for the sport to keep evolving, right?
Correct,
You can't always have the male-centric brands just because your 70% audience is going to be males watching cricket. This is just going to add and provide an opportunity for a lot of different category of brands to come in and be a part of the sport. That's always exciting to see what is the kind of marketing.
And it's a very sustainable business model. I think Jio has paid a fair amount of money for the central broadcast rights.
Correct.
The franchise fee, the player salary caps, they seem to have put it all together. I mean, the WPL does deserve a separate episode, which I'm sure we will do in the future. But yeah, it's great that we've carried into the third season, and it's going to be an exciting women's professional league.
Perfect. So we've spoken about various sports leagues that exist in India and some of the structures. There's obviously too much to talk about to encapsulate in just one episode, but we'll keep coming back with different topics about the business and culture of sport. So thank you so much for joining here at Corporate Box. Please do like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll be back again soon.